I think I was interested in the idea of sexuality as a sort of an energy. It actually looks like that, right? It looks like that, woman's hair. But actually it has a hole in front and it has a tail. So it's actually sexual too. It's like if you put the tail into the hole, it's a double sexual thing, male and female together. Okay?
I think this is a very good point to have more traffic in the YouTube channel. Hi channel, this is Wonja Lee from Architecture Recipe. Today we have a special guest named Moon-hun,
Hi.
Ryan, and Yewon. And please welcome our guests. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting us. Thanks for inviting us. Great.
Today we was gonna talk about, since your background is all architecture, we would like to talk about architecture basically, but also we'd like to talk about maybe culture in architecture or different atmosphere in architecture that people to recognize it. So yeah, I think that's all.
All right.
I'm so thankful that we would have the chance to talk about that, especially in the presence of somebody here who obviously is a legend in the architectural scene.
Oh, come on. You're flattering me, flattering me.
Before we start, maybe I should introduce Moon-hun 선생님. We call 선생님, which means master. But
No,
I'll just
Sonsei is
call-
an older guy.
Okay.
You're born before me. That's all you've got, man.
So Moon-hun is an architect currently practicing in Korea, and then he is very profound architect. Not only that, but also he's a painter and a very recognizable painter, and he did a lot of different projects. Also, he are very expert on using a very specific color, which is red, and his painting world is very unique, I think. So very recently, MoMA purchased your paints, and some of very recognized museum. Got your paint, right?
I think I had my drawings exhibited in Venice Biennale in 2014. So the story is pretty long because I had an exhibition there, and I think there was a guy, a Russian-German architect, who happened to come by. His name is Sergei Choban. And he has a great museum in Berlin called Choban Museum. Mm-hmm. It's the only museum in the world that has architect drawing, just for the architectural drawings.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you should check it out. I mean, I never knew that. So he has drawings from like Frank Gehry, Lebbeus Woods, Bow Wow. And then he said, he proposed, I like your drawings. I'm going to buy your drawings. I said, what? I never, of course, I sold my drawings when I was way when I was younger.
Yeah.
Teenager, that's a long story. But anyway, so he said, I want to buy your drawings. Come over to Berlin. So I had a car. So I drove from Venice all the way to Berlin. And so he bought about 6 drawings. So that was my first purchase. Now, after that, I was doodling constantly, and then in 2015, I think I was invited in the Chicago Biennale.
Oh yeah.
You know this, right?
You're part of Chicago.
Oh, were you?
Biennale.
Okay, well, then we are bumping into each other every day. All right. So the curator, I think, I don't remember his name now, but he was an American guy, right? And he asked me to exhibit some drawings there. So I exhibited some drawings there. And I think some people from MoMA came and saw my drawings, and then they said they want to collect the drawings. So that's when that happened. But it happened a few years later. I think 2017 or 18, they bought about 6 or 7 drawings. So I was elated in a way because I was happy. But I never wanted to be an artist. I didn't want to be recognized. My life, I just doodled, but that was it. I didn't have to be recognized. But yeah, people are recognizing. That's really great.
And then, so I want to introduce Ryan and Otterson. So they're doing their own practice under the name G. Otterson Studio, right?
Yes.
So can you introduce
I'm
yourself?
Ryan Otterson.
I'm Yewon.
This is their second time in our channel, right?
Yeah. The first time we talked about the Seoul Biennale work, and now we're here to, discuss about architecture, art, and everything.
So giving you a very short heads up is G. Otterson, Yewon, and Ryan is the winner of the Seoul Biennale in 2023, right?
Yes.
And then they currently-
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
I think I must have seen it. Okay.
Thank you.
And
Great.
currently they got second place in the 반포
한강
연결공원.
You mean the bridge, the park that covers the? Oh, I almost thought about doing it. Yeah, the Rising Stars.
Yes,
Like
yes.
that. Great.
They did their
Great.
practice in the Spanish architects, and currently they own their own studio. I guess second question I have is maybe we're gonna talk more about Moon 선생님, but how and why it is important to keep design methodology as architect? Very serious question, right?
I grew up in a small town in the east of South Korea, in Gangwon province. It's Sangdong, which is a very famous town. It was.
It's very
for tungsten.
rural.
Tungsten.
Like
No,
maybe-
it was a mining town.
Mining town.
It was a tungsten mine. So when I saw Levius' drawings, I instantly recognized it in a real spatial quality of it because when I grew up, I saw these giant factories of mining, like arms going up, things falling down. You know how Levius has a chair hanging in the middle of like a large space with lights coming in from the top and a chair in the so that reminded me of these conveyor belts in the mining towns with roofs like rusted because there's no, it can get wet, it doesn't matter. So then you have this monumental, almost religious space. Levius doesn't say that, but I was aware of it. So for me, it was so real. So understanding that space really came into me as a kind of real space that I was inspired to. And as you said, also like Mario Botta's work, I always liked because of that graphic, simple quality. And I guess I'm like a very simple person maybe. So I like something that's very recognizable. I'm really into it because now I'm doing a lot of buildings based on characters. So I morph the characters and it becomes architecture. So yeah, I think these are two influences. But I'm not consciously trying to make a methodology or I don't really pursue it per se.
Right.
But I have likings and inclinations. But I feel sometimes some of my architect friends criticize me with a smile. Don't put horns on your buildings, Moon. So but for me, it was all to do with how to be flexible about the idea of architecture, how far it can go, how flexible architecture can be, how far will it go, where is it going to go? So my drawings explore architecture can become like a biomimicry and becomes a kind of intelligent being. Eventually, then architecture becomes a living thing. And so I'm always trying to just break the envelope in the sense. And sometimes I'm just accepting clients' wishes and I may extremize it because the horn on one of the buildings I did was the wish of a client who said, represent bullfight for me. Well, that's simple. Just put the horn on it. Oh yeah, that's simple. Yeah, why not? Mm-hmm. And then there was a clash between this, realistic shaped thing with an abstract, and there's a conflict, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah.
Actually, I was going to get to that point, but you just opened this question earlier. So
Yeah.
I want to ask then, maybe second question I was going to ask was, because we talking about the language work, some people say style, but you have your specific taste of your architecture, I think. So maybe someone would say like sexuality, putting in your architecture world. So can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, two things that has been explicit or implicit at the same time is the sexuality thing. Because I was jokingly, I'll make love to a building and new buildings will come out. I'll make a movie about it. So that's the extreme case, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Anyway, so my first project, I think I was interested in the idea of sexuality as a sort of an energy, like the tantric Buddhism and all these esoteric religious rituals and all these ideas from the past about the sexual energy being, energy of creativity and all that. So I feel that it's quite unique. I'm not unique, but so I was interested in that. And also I was interested in the images of sexuality that is prevalent here. So one of the buildings I did was how a woman dresses up had a very fishnet stockings. I had, oh, that's really nice. Maybe I should use that as a language about architecture, wrapping the architecture with stockings. So one of my buildings were about putting stockings over the building. So there was some sexuality about that. And I think it was just not just as a cliche or anything. It's just that there was a belief that there was an energy, sexual energy, which was part of life that could be expressed. Because if you go to India, you know Kajuaro, right? The temple where there are 108 positions of sexual union engraved into the building. So it has been, it's always been a part of architecture, but explicitly represented in the Indian culture. So yeah, I'm not saying I'm going to carry that tradition and making something important in modern times, but it's just, personally, I really enjoyed it. I guess radical when I was younger, trying to just make fun of establishments and provide something new. Why can't this be possible? Why do we have to just trust or believe what's here? So that was my also attitude, like not fighting, but having a radical exhibition of new possibilities. So that's when sexuality came in, I think. Of course, and my being as a desire. I'm a very sexual person, so I don't know what that means. Why am I saying this? But but I'm saying, that's it's in me. So it should be not expelled but expressed.
It's definitely a different type of architecture that we do, but I enjoy the playfulness of your architecture. I think the first one that we visited was 우주오리 in Jeju-do, remember?
Yes,
In Jeju
yeah.
Island.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We drove there, we didn't stay there, but we drove there and just looking around and and I was like, oh, this is so playful. Like, where do you find this thing? Like nowhere. So I think that was
Yeah, I think, and the other thing is the story. I'd like to make a story out of it because, Jeju Island is very windy and the gold comes from, when in winter, all the plants turn gold, right? Because, it withers. And there's a lot of basalt rocks. There's a strong contrast in Jeju Island in winter. There's gold, there's black basalt rocks, and there's tremendous wind. So that, I try to transform that idea into architecture. So that's why there's the gold and there's the basalt rocks. So it's not just, it is playful, but I think I'm very contextual in the sense that I try to draw energy of the place and put it there. Because a lot of times you see modern architecture in Jeju Island, there's nothing to do with Jeju environment per se, right? It's just same as in Seoul. Why would you do that, So I was always thinking, if you are in Jeju Island, just learn from what is in Jeju Island. Of course, it's very, very superficial, I'm sure, but that's the idea. And the shape of that is from a woman, the wind blowing woman's hair. That's what it is.
But that's not true.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's in
like
the
a-
movie. I made a
There's
movie
like
about
meaning behind of the shape of it.
Yeah, I know.
Should I talk about it or?
No, you can talk about it. Of course. Yeah, of course. He's looking at me. He's lying. He didn't tell me the last time. No. You see, of course.
We want to know the true story about it.
No, the shape has been remeaned into this, but at first, it had. You see, it's when I'm speaking something, there's a multiple things in it. So I'm not lying, but multiply. It even as a it actually looks like that, right? It looks like that woman's hair, but actually it has a hole in front and it has a tail. So it's actually sexual too. It's like if you put the tail into the hole, it's a double sexual thing, male and female together. Okay?
I think this is a very good point to have more traffic in the YouTube channel.
So no. So I was thinking about genesis of the world, right? We can talk about superficial yin and yang, and all these things. But I was trying to make it into a form, right? So there's a almost phallic tail at the end, but there's a hole in front. If you rotate it, it becomes a self-fulfilling thing. So and it's circular, but it's in symbolic drawings from the past. We have drawings like that.
So I think this is something that I'm really curious about and interesting about Moon-hoon, because he's like a treasure of Korea. Because the reason why I'm giving him credit, because I don't really think that way, and even though I couldn't think of it, but I couldn't really try to using that as a sources to like using my creativity. But he kind of like opened the very first door to using like those sexuality or like layering, multiple layer for the architecture. So that's why I'm thinking very interesting.
Yeah, I think that multi-layering and multifaceted aspect is really interesting, and I think it's also what I tend to see some in Korea more than I see in the United States. But I think what's special about it is that a lot of architecture is just like too precious. But I think letting things be looser and more multifaceted, have multiple readings, I think that's more appropriate to the human condition in general. Yeah.
My next question would be, in terms of practicality that you experience Korean versus American industry, could you tell us a little bit about maybe the main difference, or can you tell more about Korean industry that you experience? Because I think there are a lot of like professional architect actually look into Korean industry or this Seoul area for getting a new project, starting a new project, but they're hesitating or they don't know about anything. So could you tell a little bit about it?
In the US, I think what's happening is that larger firms are taking an even more increasing share of whatever work's going on, a lot of times through acquisition of smaller firms. And I think day by day, it seems like the opportunities for young architects to kind of participate in building new exciting work seem to kind of decrease. You know, Yeon will have to speak to some of what I see in Korea is maybe a little bit more opportunity for engagement with young architects. There's a lot more smaller offices, and it seems like, especially in some of these sort of smaller streets with the sort of, you know, up to 4-story sort of buildings, whether it's a commercial building or a house, there's a lot of experimentation. And I think the other thing in the US is regulation is so tight, whereas I feel like there's a little bit more looseness and freedom of how things are done, especially in regard to like details and things in Korea, that I think is quite creative and makes for a quite creative scene.
So you think that people outside of Korea, they should like challenge you or like aggressively try to come to Korea, get more projects?
I think it's an exciting place to be. I'm not looking for more competition, but definitely I think it's a very exciting place to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were talking a little bit about it, about this situation where you don't really see any, it's very hard for a young architect to make a name for himself in America because there's not many opportunities, right? Not even competition, not that many, right?
Right.
So as you say, in Korea, at least we have this gunseng, which is small and it's open for experimentation, right? So at least Korean young architects are able to do that. So I think we're better off, I think.
Yeah.
You think that too,
think so.
right?
We agree, yeah.
So that's what I felt all the time because I had great talents from my school, and they're great. They were much better, talented people, hardworking people, Americans, and there's nothing wrong with working for a big firm. But what I'm saying, I thought they would open their own firm and do something weird, right?
Right, and maybe they didn't because they couldn't.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I was like, oh, America is not such a good place for an architect in the sense that you cannot really, like, you have to be really lucky or something to, you know, open up and grow up there. You know, you can't be Stephen Hall anymore. Very difficult, I think, in America.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's cool, that's cool.
I mean, we talk about Japan. Japan, I think, I heard that they have so many architects because even Japan is even better because in Korea we have apartments, right? But in Japan, mostly a lot of houses. So a lot of architects just do houses. 1 or 2 houses a year, that's enough. So there are so many great architects in Japan, so many of them. Not many published even, because, you know, there are so many of them, great architects. So when I was walking in Tokyo, just in the neighborhoods, oh wow, so, you know, there are so many interesting things. So, you know, I think so Japanese architects are luckier in that sense, same. I think their numbers are like maybe 20 times more than Korean architects. Yeah, there are so many. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in terms of the market size, like we have very different like scales and